In this episode, our chief medical correspondent, Dr. Floyd, sits down with Professor Thomas Seager. He's a speaker, author, and a friend of Joe Rogan. And his doctor thought he was injecting testosterone after his levels hit 1100 nanograms per deciliter naturally. And today you'll hear how he did it. Welcome to the Sierra Health Podcast.
Everybody, welcome Dr. Seager, Professor Seager, PhD, the CEO of Morosco Forge Cold Plunge, and we have him on the podcast today because it's an amazing modality to really up-level your health and wellness. Welcome, Doc.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Awesome. How did you? Real quick, I know I read your book, Uncommon Cold. Everybody should read it. It's a great book. It's an easy read. It's a fun read. Like I was telling you before, you're quite entertaining. You give Seinfeld a run for his money.
No, but thank you, Robert. I gave a copy of Uncommon Cold to Jay Bhattacharya. This was before the election, before he became the director of the National Institutes for Health. And we're friends because we were both faculty opposed to the lockdown. And he picks it up. He doesn't do ice baths at all. You know, he's not even interested. But he thumbs through it like this. He goes, Tom, there are too many scientific footnotes in here. It'll never sell. Nobody wants to read your journal citations. I'm like, Jay, that's too bad. I'm a professor and I'm going to stay that way. There's something like 600 different citations in Uncommon Cold. And people still ask me sometimes, you know, if there's enough science on it.
Yeah, you know, that I will vouch for you. It's not like reading a dry paper, a scientific paper. It's a good read. You got a lot of good stories in it. Talks about your history. You know, you had a scare with some very highly elevated PSA, and you went and did this. You went and cold plunge. What cold plunge were you doing before? Like, did you just have one, or where did you
I
do
bought a chest freezer. This, you know, before Sears went bankrupt for the fourth time or something, the Kenmore appliances, they have a pretty good reputation. And so I went on to Sears and I bought this big old Kenmore chest freezer. This is maybe 10 years ago, not even, but it's getting up there. And it was really just because I was interested in doing it every day. I did not want to go to the Quickie Mart and get like 300 pounds of ice and then pour it in a horse trough and then watch it all melt because it's 115 degrees, you know, in the backyard in Phoenix. So I thought, all right, you know, I've seen this. Some guys are doing it on YouTube. I'll give it a shot. The problem is, it never really works the way you want it to work. It'll leak and then it'll stop leaking and you feel like a side of venison when you get in there. But as an experiment, it wasn't a bad thing. Well, my former student was like, look, we're engineers. Why don't we just build one? And that seemed like a pretty reasonable challenge. If I could have bought an ice bath that made ice in like 2017, there would be no Morosco Forge. I just would have been a customer and not an inventor. And I would have been a lot better off financially. But we built this prototype. It cost me $25,000, you know, in parts and wood and stuff like that. And we had a party and we invited friends over and we took pictures of one another. And somebody said, well, I'd like to buy one. And we thought, okay, you know, this was fun. We'll make one. So I got rid of that chest freezer as we got more inventive. I got Morosco #2 on my balcony and I got into that thing every damn day. And it wasn't because I was trying to recover from my workout or my knees hurt from my run or something like that. I'm a fat, sedentary college professor. I don't do any of that gym bro Huberman stuff. But I had that PSA report and it was 7. And anything over 4 is considered an elevated risk of prostate cancer. When I talked with other men about what did they do? Did they ever have a PSA test? And, did they have the exam? And did they have the biopsy? The stories were terrible. Every man who had a biopsy told me it was the worst pain he'd ever experienced. And one of my best friends said he'd had his prostate removed. He'll never have an erection again. And I'm like, when did that happen? He goes, well, that was 2 years ago. And you didn't even tell me. He's like, men don't talk enough about this. He was going through this huge thing, and I never even knew. I said, there's no way. First of all, I'm not telling anybody but other men. I am not telling my kids. I'm not telling my ex-wife. I'm not telling anyone but the guys, because I know that if one of my daughters came up to me and said, Dad, we love you. We want you to get the treatment. Won't you please go to the urologist? Won't you please do everything you can do? What? I never would have been able to resist her plea. So I kept that to myself, and I got in that Morosco every damn day because I was afraid I was going to die. It took me 4 months, Robert, to have the courage to go back to the lab, because it's on my conscience, but I don't actually want the blood drawn. I don't want the results, because if they go the wrong way, then I got nothing left. 4 months later, they took the blood out. I got the results. 3 days later, they come on my computer in the email. 1.8. It's going in the right direction. I had no risk, no elevated risk, but I still was kind of chicken about it. I needed another one, but this time I waited a month. I'm like, let's go see what it is now, just to be sure. 1.1. And the second time that I went, I did the full male health panel. I check all the boxes, and one of them, of course, is a testosterone test. I was 750s, like mid 700s at the time I got my elevated PSA. Now I'm doing ice baths every day. I get out of that Morosco, it's cold. I got to warm up a little bit, and then I walk to campus, which was about a mile. So I get a little exercise. My testosterone jumped more than 400 points. I was 1180 nanograms per deciliter after 5 months of daily cold plunging and then doing my steps or my lunges or my steel mace or whatever it was. 1180 nanograms per deciliter when I'm 53 years old and a college professor is unheard of. But I'm in the clean on the prostate. So, I'm not worried about high testosterone. I thought, now that I'm good, I'll send my labs straight to the urologist. I'm going to get a pat on the back. I'm going to get a clean bill of health. Everything's going to be cool for me. The urologist, whom I met with in person, he says, I want to run one more test. He was about my age. He didn't care about the PSA. He was only looking at the testosterone because that number jumped right off the lab reports. He said, I want to get your luteinizing hormone. I didn't know what luteinizing hormone was because my doctorate is in engineering. So I got to go back to the internet and I got to Google around. Luteinizing hormone is what signals the man's testicles to make the testosterone. So if your testosterone is way high and your luteinizing hormone is way low, your urologist is going to say, Professor Seager, get off the juice.
Yeah.
He knows, that the patient is taking steroids because it's not coming from the testicles. Now, he, like a lot of medical doctors at the time, probably thought that testosterone, because it's anabolic, would increase the risk of prostate cancer or accelerate the growth of tumor cells. Turns out that's not the case. That is a misconception that has persisted for decades. Dr. Abraham Morgentaler has written the papers that actually look at the data. High testosterone protects against prostate cancer. But in his mind, he's probably like, it would be irresponsible of him if he didn't counsel me to stop juicing. So I sent him the luteinizing hormone report, 8.9, Robert. It was off the charts. And I never heard from that urologist again.
Perfect. Yeah. The whole elevated testosterone leading to prostate cancer has been completely debunked.
It was never true in the first place. Like, Brigham Bueller pointed me in the right direction. Some 1946 paper.
Yep.
They got like data points. It barely even suggests anything. And every single study since then refutes this idea that testosterone somehow might increase the risk of prostate cancer.
Yeah, the studies that they cherry picked that data from was completely bogus studies. There was like, I think 3 study participants. I mean, it was just the biggest crock of crap in the world. And because of that, forever, everyone's like, like you talked about, like in one of your other talks, everybody who has prostate cancer, they're on an anastrozole. They're on an anti testosterone medication, which is terrible. And so, let's go into the whole like testosterone levels in, obviously they're declining a lot in men, especially, middle age, 30s, 40s, and even in younger men today. And so,
Correct.
what do you think? What are some of the first biological signs that a man's hormones or metabolisms might be declining?
That's a great question because the first signs are ignored. The later signs feel like they're too late. Testosterone, of course, controls body composition. It controls libido. And so everybody understands that if you've sort of if you're not horny, you're not healthy. If you've lost that libido, then there's something metabolically, hormonally wrong. But it's really easy to ignore. And by the time the testosterone gets what most doctors would call clinically low, I think the expectations for male testosterone are far too low. What they call normal, I don't want to have anything to do with it. If you're in the 400s, you're low. Even if your medical doctor says, oh, no, nothing to be worried about. I would be worried about it if my numbers were there. They don't just lose their libido, they lose their drive. They lose their motivation. They lose their zest for life. And this is why by the time people start to pay attention, it could be too late because you can't get the guy up off the couch to do anything about it. A lot of mental health issues are associated with low testosterone. Testosterone is not just a sex steroid. It is also got a psychological component. And there's been some really fascinating studies. There's a feedback loop between your competitive nature, your willingness to strive, and your testosterone level. There was a study of chess players. These aren't even like tennis or rugby. It's not even a macho sport. But these chess players who are getting ready for a challenging match would experience an increase in their testosterone. If they won, they would get even more of an increase, which would motivate them to compete more. If they lost, they would not get the same boost. But just the thought of the competition and preparing for it would increase their testosterone. When your testosterone is low, you lose the motivation to compete, which just makes it go even lower. So these mental health issues are the most serious indication, I think, as an engineer, for testosterone replacement therapy. I hate the idea of doing for your body with an injection what your body should really be doing for itself. But my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 6 years old. His pancreas doesn't make insulin anymore. Thank God for genetically modified E. coli bacteria that are producing human insulin because it allows my son to stay healthy. I can recognize that there are situations where a man could go on testosterone, and this is an important intervention because he's not got the right mindset to really get his head and his life back together. The downside is the longer you stay on TRT, the less work your testicles are doing. Their ability to produce testosterone will atrophy. You can keep them producing sperm if you take a placental hormone with your testosterone, but they will atrophy in their capacity to produce your own testosterone. This is wonderful for the pharmaceutical industry because they just made another lifetime customer. Now you need constant injections of T, just like my son needs constant injections of insulin. And so this is why I say as a temporary measure, if you've got to lift the guy up so that he can do other things to get his life together, I'm all in favor of it. But I saw Huberman on the Mark Bell podcast, and Huberman made a good point. He said he doesn't know anybody who's voluntarily come off of TRT. Most of the men who go on it, they feel so much better right away. They don't ever want to take the chance that they're going to go back to feeling the way they were when they were low. And so they'll say, no, this is what I do. This is the routine that works for me. And they won't ever leave it.
Yeah. When I get, because I do a lot of TRT replacement therapy for patients, because, a lot of them aren't going to cold plunge, a lot of them aren't going to change their diet and lifestyle. And I can't tell you how many times I've had someone say, oh my God, my mood is so much better. My energy
Yep.
levels are better. There's,
Yep.
and testosterone is like, it's the hormone of longevity. And it's not, like you said, it's not just a sex hormone. Yes, it's great for that. It's great for sex drive. But it also gives you energy. It gives you that joie de vivre, that zest for life. Makes you want to compete. It makes you want to get off the couch. And so I think it's really fantastic. I'll admit I'm on TRT. I don't think I've ever had a really high testosterone level. I wish I had a cold plunge before I started it, but at this point, I still cold plunge. I have a Morosco Forge in my garage. I cold plunge every single day. This is my year. 2026 was, quote, my year of discipline. And so I said, I'm going to get up and I'm going to cold plunge every day, no matter what. And so, there's claims that regular cold plunging can increase testosterone, right? From the science that you've reviewed. Is there actual evidence that freezing yourself might improve the male hormones? And let me phrase this too, because I know what you're going to say, because it's not just, it's the mitochondria mitogenesis, it's the improved mitochondrial health, yada, yada, yada. So let's talk a little bit about that, if you would, please.
A year after I wrote The Uncommon Cold, I wrote this book, Uncommon Testosterone. I don't want to be common. I don't want to be normal, because normal is sick. So it's this uncommon series of books. It's sort of the uncommon brand. And in this one, I go into greater depth about why we have a testosterone crisis in the United States and other Western countries. It's the mitochondria, how to lift our population or ourselves up out of that crisis. And I have 4 case studies of men and women who are extremely well documented, labs before and after. I've interviewed every single one of them that corroborates the clinical data. Now, the clinical data was never really directed at ice bath and then before exercise. It was never really directed at pre-cooling. What we have to do is extract from studies on, Italian rugby players who were doing 2-a-days and things like this. We have to take the clinical data where we can find it and infer what's going on with the subjects. But when we have these powerful case studies, one of them was a firefighter in California. He injured a testicle because he was in a harness. He got dropped. His testicle got crushed. His testosterone went down into the 200s, which is pretty natural. They gave him TRT. He didn't like it. A lot of things were going wrong in his life at that moment, and he thought maybe the testosterone supplementation was causing tantrums and anger and things that were sort of stereotypical of testosterone abuse rather than testosterone for medicinal use. He took himself off of it, but he started going to his pool in the winter. He's in Visalia, where it gets cold in California. And then he would do his exercise. And then he found me online. Now, I've done an extensive interview. He was up into the 900s with one nut.
Wow.
Robert, that's a pretty powerful case study. I've got 2 women. One of them, she doesn't even have any ovaries. She had her ovaries and her uterus removed. So she was surgically menopausal in her 30s. She's now 60, and she had been taking testosterone because it has many of the same effects in women. Lifts mood, helps improve body composition. Even cognitive benefits can come out of having a healthy testosterone level. When she saw one of my podcasts, she said, well, I'm going to cold plunge every day. Women don't even have to exercise, Robert. In women, the testosterone is made in 4 different locations, certainly the ovaries, but also the skin cells, the fat cells, and the adrenal glands. With no ovaries, her skin, fat, and adrenal glands kind of have to work overtime to keep her at a healthy level. And what is the best way for a woman to stimulate her skin, her fat, and her adrenals? get into the ice bath and you're going to hit them all. There's one trial, and this was in, of course, undergraduate women, early 20s, and it was using cold stimulation, where they used the cold pressor test, put one hand in a bowl of ice water.
Yeah.
They measured saliva testosterone, which is not the best measure, but qualitatively, you can see whether it's going up or down. You just can't use it as a diagnostic tool. And these women who were putting the hand in the cold water, immediate increase in their saliva testosterone. The men didn't get the same because a hand in the cold water does not stimulate the testicles. A man's skin and adrenal glands will also make some testosterone, but he needs so much more, almost 10 times more than a woman does, that if the testicles aren't doing the job, his testosterone will be right down there at a level that is more typically feminine. Well, Pamela Butler, she gave me permission to use her name. I've written her up in the book. Her testosterone levels jumped to 160, which is way too high for a healthy woman in her 60s. And her doctor almost had a heart attack. She's like, we got to get you up with this testosterone.
I'll bet she felt amazing.
I asked her, I said, Pamela, did you grow a beard? And she was a little offended. I mean, she had a good sense of humor. She's like, no. I said, well, did you feel masculine? She says, I've never felt more feminine in my life.
Nice. Yep.
She
I
felt
get
fantastic.
there's, one of the reasons to put women on testosterone replacement therapy as they get through menopause is for libido, and it really works. And one of my patients, she was really excited about the change in the body composition. She's like, I got this little pooch in front and I want to get rid of it. And so it will help her tremendously. And one of the things I always tell people, though, like if you're on TRT, you have to work out. You have to lift weights. You have to use that and make sure that you're using the TRT like it's supposed to be used, so it just doesn't float around in your body. Because again, like I said, testosterone is the hormone of longevity as we age, but muscle is the organ of longevity. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand today. There's a term called sarcopenia, and sarcopenia is a loss of muscle mass as we age, and it goes up in a linear form. And a lot of people don't understand that right along that exact path is morbidity and mortality. It parallels that increased sarcopenia. So I tell everybody, I'm talking to my mom and dad, I'm talking to these patients I have there in their late 60s. They're like, you have to lift weights. You have to build muscle. And it's amazing. And so switching from muscle to brown fat, that's a very interesting topic as well. And, a lot of people have never even heard of brown fat, brown adipose tissue. Can you give us a little bit of information on that? Because I think people need to understand it. And I know that when I cold plunge every single day, I'm building my brown fat, and I know it's good for me. Yep. Can you tell us why?
Yep. A lot of people haven't heard about brown fat because maybe 16 or 17 years ago, people thought it didn't exist in adults. We always knew it was in infants because infants don't have the muscles developed enough to shiver. We've all had the experience of shivering to keep ourselves warm. So that's called shivering thermogenesis. But infants aren't going to shiver, so they need another organ for thermogenesis, and that's brown fat, non-shivering thermogenesis. Then, the child grows up, and medical doctors used to think, well, there's no really such thing as brown fat. I can still read journal articles from early 2000s that say, well, of course, we know there's no brown fat in the adult human, but it's really interesting what happens in children and in rodents. Then the Swedish team of researchers was looking at PET scans. The positron emission tomography is used to image tumors. You give the patient a radioactive glucose tracer because the tumors are so hungry for glucose, that glucose will become concentrated in the tumor tissue, and then it'll light up the PET scan. But they kept getting these symmetrical depots of something showing up on these scans, and these Swedes were like, well, what the hell is that? Robert, these instrument rooms are kept kind of cold. The instruments use a lot of power, and if you don't cool them, then they're not going to work properly. So the instrument rooms themselves are sometimes too cool for the patients. Then you put somebody in one of those hospital gowns with their ass hanging out, and 5% of the Swedes were lighting up these symmetrical depots that couldn't possibly be cancer, because cancer is not symmetrical. And the Swedish researchers said, we think that's brown fat. They published a little paper. Somebody at the Sloan Kettering Institute said, hell no, we've got 10,000 PET scans. I'm going to show those Swedes that they're full of crap. They went over every one of them. And sure enough, they found like 500 that had brown fat. That means there were 9,500 with no detectable brown fat whatsoever. You can kind of forgive the physicians who think it doesn't exist because it's rare. It's the people who have the outdoor jobs, the people who, the mailmen who deliver all winter, the people who are out in the cold getting the regular cold exposure that activate the brown fat when they're in the cold instrument room. So rodents, lots of data. You put a rat in a cold ice bath or something, it's going to recruit new brown fat. It's been 15 years. You can now get a PhD just in brown fat. I know this because Susanna Solberg did it at Copenhagen University, where she took these Danish winter swimmers. She did a bunch of PET scans, and every human adult who gets regular, deliberate cold exposure will have positive depots of brown fat. So why is that a good thing? The idea that you don't really need to put a sweater on, in the fall is great. You can keep yourself warm and you can brag about it if you like. But brown fat is not just for non-shivering thermogenesis. Brown fat is also an essential secretory organ. So it is producing FGF21, which promotes brain health. It's associated with RMB3, and I forget what that stands for, but it's another neuroprotective factor. The relationship between the brown fat and protection of the brain is very positive. It's the brown fat and the thyroid, though, that are the big thing. People will come to Phoenix, and after a few years, because it never really gets cold here, they'll become what we call Phoenix wimps. The Canadians will come down for spring training, and they'll be playing frisbee in their sandals at 40 degrees or something, and the Phoenician is all with a cap and wrapped up. They've lost their brown fat. They've lost their non-shivering thermogenesis. And if that goes long enough, you're going to lose the thyroid too. The thyroid and the brown fat are in constant communication. The thyroid produces mostly an inactive form of thyroid hormone. That's its job. The brown fat will convert it to the active form. And so in this way, the brown fat is more responsible for your thyroid function than the thyroid even is. Most physicians, when they test someone for hypothyroid, so this is an underactive thyroid, they're going to check the thyroid stimulating hormone. That's just like the luteinizing hormone. That's like signaling the thyroid to make more hormone. And then they're going to check the inactive hormone that the thyroid is actually making. Very few of them will check the active form called the T3. And so you might have a patient who's symptomatic of hypothyroidism. Take their blood samples, be like, oh, no, your thyroid's fine. Well, it is fine, but the thyroid's only half the job. They're not getting any brown fat. Next thing you know, their thermoregulatory system is all dysfunctional. Next thing you know, they've got Raynaud's, and the physician is advising them to stay warm and bundle up, which only makes the whole cycle worse. So brown fat is this essential organ that almost no one has. It's associated with better mental health, with better metabolism, with increased insulin sensitivity, which means better glucose control. And that's why people who have brown fat do not get ill, are not at risk for chronic illness at the same rate as people who don't have any brown fat. Because every chronic illness originates in insulin resistance. And that's a defect of the mitochondria.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually a good segue to, I was watching one of your other videos and talking about, they do call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. Insulin resistance is absolutely rampant in our society today. A, because of lack of exercise, B, because of obesity, C, because of ultra processed foods, you name it, right? But
Uh,
you had mentioned in one of your talks about how cold plunging can help with Alzheimer's, and you mentioned that your mother had a pretty severe form of dementia, and that I have a patient with not early onset, but early stages of Alzheimer's. And after I saw that video, I reached out to them and said, you got to get him in a cold plunge immediately. And so
Yep.
how does, okay, I think I know the answer, but again, cold plunging is going to help with the mitochondria efficiency and mitogenesis, which then increases insulin resistance, correct? That makes
Insulin
sense.
sensitivity increases. Yep.
I mean,
And
yeah, sorry, insulin
let's
sensitivity
see if
increases.
we want to explain it for your audience, like we're trying to explain it to a patient. And this may be an advantage that I don't have a medical degree, because I don't even know how to pronounce some of the words, Robert. Like, educated as an engineer, I'm a teacher. So I'm reading the journal and I'm talking to the doctors, and then I have to somehow translate it into my naive engineering mind. I'm going to give that a shot. The mitochondria are the keystones of our metabolism. There are really two stages to the metabolism. The first one's in the gut. You might think you digest your food, but you do not. It is your gut microbiome that digests your food. Most of, like 99% of the DNA on which your metabolism relies isn't even yours. It belongs to these other little microbial creatures that are breaking down the food that you eat into the glucose or into the fatty acids that can then be absorbed by your bloodstream and carried to your mitochondria. The mitochondria are the second stage. And when the mitochondria are damaged or dysfunctional, the parts of your body that rely on that metabolism start to break down. About 25% of your total metabolic throughput is going through your brain. Other functions in men, erectile dysfunction, first clinical marker of metabolic dysregulation, that there's a mitochondrial problem. Your heart uses a lot of energy as well. So everything that is demanding of energy is going to start to lose function as your mitochondria accumulate damage. And most doctors are going to say, well, that's just you getting older. There are 4 routes to mitochondrial injury. No particular order, but the first one that comes to mind for me is the non-native EMFs. Your mitochondria will absorb light. They will absorb radiation. They just happen to be tuned to electromagnetic frequencies, and with they get good stuff like sun, infrared, for example. This supports their function. When they get the bad stuff from your earbuds or too much blue light at night, this degrades their function. So the non-native EMFs turn your Wi-Fi off at night. Second one, seed oils. Seed oils are rich in what are called omega-6, in particular linoleic acid. And so this is cottonseed oil, soybean oil, canola oil.
It's called but Doc, it's vegetable oil, so it's healthy.
Right? You're drinking corn.
Yeah.
What the heck is that? There's no vegetables in vegetable oil. What a marketing nightmare that is. And they're not supposed to be partially hydrogenated into something called margarine either.
No.
But they're in everything
Everything.
because they're so cheap. The problem is that they have a double bond. They're called omega-6 because the double bond in the hydrocarbon chain is in the 6 position compared to the omega-3 that has it in the 3 position. There's even omega-9. So, and they're all classified by where is this double bond. Now, if you're going to metabolize these seed oils, and the nutritionists will say, oh, there's a lot of calories, you got to go burn that off or something. I suppose the seed oils aren't really a big deal. But the problem is they're incorporated into your membranes. The membranes in the body are made of something called phospholipids. The mitochondria have their own membrane, two of them actually, outer and inner. Every cell has a membrane, and they take those seed oils to construct their membranes. When the hydrocarbon double bond is in the wrong position, the membrane is being made of these molecules that are the wrong shape. The membrane function breaks down. And so the second way that you can damage your mitochondria, too many seed oils in the diet. Third way is excess carbohydrates without a break. It is okay to have a piece of birthday cake, put some ice cream on it, but you got to give your mitochondria a break from those glucose spikes. So what do I mean by a break? That's either intermittent fasting or periods of keto. The Mediterranean diet is so interesting because it doesn't really exist. It's a made-up thing. If you read Nina Teichholz's book, Big Fat Surprise, she talks about how the Mediterranean diet is a marketing artifact. But what the Mediterranean does have are these orthodox religions that require their, congregations to fast. And so you must give up this on this day, or this on this day, or this for this period. And those periods of fasting build into the schedule this mitochondrial recovery. So you can feast, but then you also go through the periods of fasting. Just like you exercise, your muscles are sore, and then you rest, they come back stronger. If you're one of those people that's always ripping open a foil pack, I don't really care what's in the foil pack. You could be eating, your David bars or whatever the podcaster says you're supposed to eat. You are not giving your mitochondria a break, and they need that to recover. So that would be ketosis or fasting. And then the last one that I probably shouldn't even have to mention, but it's just pollution. The aluminum, fluoride, brominated flame retardants, the PFAS, the mercury, the lead, the heavy metals, the things that just aren't supposed to be in our bodies, the microplastics. These are no good for the mitochondria either. They act through the mitochondria and they damage their function. So what does cold plunging do? When the brain doesn't have the mitochondria to metabolize what it needs to actually think, to work, to repair, well, the cold plunge is going to recruit new mitochondria. And here's what I didn't understand until I talked to a couple of people, in particular, Martin Picard. Martin Picard is at Columbia University. He's a mitochondrial scientist. He's got some really kooky and fun ideas. And he pointed me to a paper. He said, Tom, fat cells will export healthy mitochondria. I didn't get can the mitochondria in the brain get better when you start cold plunging. I'm not cold plunging my brain. I don't have any brown fat in my brain. He says the fat cells export healthy mitochondria. They travel through the bloodstream and they can be imported by cells with damaged mitochondria. Robert, this blew my mind. I went to read the paper because Martin's kooky sometimes, right? He says there are mitochondria, free mitochondria in the bloodstream, and they're being measured. This action where it was particular with a heart muscle cell, where the heart muscle cells could import, these cells had suffered an ischemic injury, but now they're importing healthy mitochondria that have been exported by fat. You recruit brown fat to your body. It is rich in mitochondria. That mitochondria is created by a process called mitobiogenesis. And now I'm getting speculative. The brown fat will export mitochondria, enrich your bloodstream with the mitochondria that travel up to your brain, through your heart muscle tissue, anywhere else that is impaired and needs that energy boost, and repair the function. Now, you might think I'm a kook. All the, trolls are going to come out on Twitter and say he's not an MD. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And I will say, what do you want to do? Go with the amyloid plaque hypothesis? When Jay Bhattacharya, was testifying, right?
Yeah.
$1 billion worth of NIH research go up in smoke because of fraud, because the photographs were fake.
And they're still pushing it.
Yep. Still targeting amyloid plaques, which are all based upon corrupted incentive structures within the university to try and make faculty famous instead of patients healthy.
Yes.
So I wish my mom had gotten in the cold water. But by the time uh, I saw her right after the lockdowns were lifted, by the time I started figuring this out, it was way too late for her. I was actually praying. I hope this doesn't make me sound like a terrible person, because I'm not, but I was praying for her to pass quietly in her sleep. She was already gone to me,
Yeah.
and I wanted her to go up to heaven.
You know, that is not a bad thing at all. I mean, you did that in pure empathy and compassion. I get it, man. I see these people in the hospitals all the time. You know, I know someone who got really, really bad Alzheimer's, and honestly, the best thing that could happen for her is to pass away peacefully. She doesn't want to be like that anymore. She doesn't want to be reliant and a burden on her family. Nobody wants to be like that, period. And so it's really, really sad. You know, you're talking about mitochondria and fasting. I do intermittent fasting almost every single day. I do 16 and 8. I love it. And, you know, it's, you know, autophagy, and there's like mitophagy, the mitochondrial biogenesis. I love it. It makes more and more efficient mitochondria. And I mean, I'm telling this to all my clients, all my patients all the time. Everybody's got to do intermittent fasting. You know, Dale Bredesen talks about how everybody should do intermittent fasting at minimum 12 hours a day. And here in the United States, we have it all backwards. Like I eat, my window is like usually 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon till about 9 o'clock p.m. because we, you know, like I said, my wife has horses. In the summertime, we don't eat dinner till 9:30 sometimes. America has it backwards. They wake up, and from the time they're awake, they eat until they go to bed. And just stuff in their faces and so on and so forth. And so, you know, it's pretty simple, pretty basic. Fasting is free. You know, intermittent fasting, completely free, easy to do. And once you get into it, you get over that mental hump of like, oh my God, I'm going to get hangry. My blood sugar is going to drop. I'm sorry. People's blood sugar does not drop precipitously enough. Your body is genius. It knows where to get the energy. Okay. So, you know, we've been going at this for a good
opinion. Yes. If you don't have the metabolic flexibility to switch back and forth from glucose metabolism to fat metabolism, it can be an uncomfortable couple or 3 days. They're not making up hangry, but they're using it to try and sell you a Snickers bar. It's not good for you. Go for a jog, go for a walk, get some sunshine instead of eating the Snickers bar, because the sun and the little bit of light exercise is going to be enough to change your mood. Have a cup of black coffee if you're allowed that, or yerba mate if coffee isn't your thing. And a little bit of caffeine will help curb your appetite and get you through that tough spit. If you're trying to do your intermittent fasting by skipping lunch, by the time you get to 3:30, 4 o'clock, most people are like, I could keep going. You know, I could even skip dinner if I wanted.
Yeah.
So there's a...
You know, it's weird. It's like, it's really, I've been fasting for years now. I love it. And what I find is really weird, if I do eat in the morning, it turns on a switch and I want to eat all day long. I'm like, what the hell happened to me? But it's really, really weird. But, you know, part of that is like, you know, one of the is getting over the mental barriers of fasting. People, like, for some reason, everybody wants to be, I got to eat all day. I got to eat all day. Like, I mean, granted, it's the billboards, it's the TV commercials. We're all brainwashed to think that we need to eat. But let's transition real quickly, kind of maybe wrap this up with, you know, I cold plunge every day. I freaking hate it. I do not like to cold plunge, but I do it, right? And there's a lot of questions about resilience. You know, Goggins and Huberman talked about the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, right? And how when you do things that you don't want to do, that portion of your brain gets bigger and gives you more resilience. Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
I'm glad you brought it up, because you don't like the ice bath. I don't like the ice bath. Joe Rogan doesn't like the ice bath. I know David Goggins doesn't like nobody likes the ice bath. If you're doing this right, you hate it.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is, The most difficult part of every ice bath is the 15 seconds right before I
Bingo.
get into the ice bath. And I've done thousands of these ice baths. I'm in there every day. But God dang it, Robert, I'm still like, I think maybe I could skip a day. I could maybe double up tomorrow. It'll be fine. I don't even have to shoot a video. This isn't even on Instagram. I'm just going to get another cup of coffee. That's it. Like some part of my involuntary head starts trying to talk myself out of it. And that sometimes Rogan comes in handy. He's like, you got to kill your inner bitch and you just got to do it. Or,
Yep.
you got to listen to the inner general or whatever little. Mostly what I do is I take a deep breath and I say, hey, do you remember yesterday? I'm talking to myself now, Robert, out on my balcony. Do you remember yesterday, Tom, when you felt exactly like this and then you got in and then 15 seconds later you said, what the hell was I even worried about? This happens to me every day. There's that initial shock and it's there for a reason. That is the fight or flight response. This is the sympathetic division of your central nervous system, and it is telling you to stay alive. Don't go in that ice water. You can't help it.
You can go back to bed where it's warm. Go get some coffee.
Exactly. Right? It's like watching that movie Halloween 17 and some guy is like, hey, let's go up to the water tower. All those kids got axe murdered last year on this night. Some part of your brain is like, no, don't do that. But then you do it. And then you structure your breathing. And then you got the ice chunks floating around your neck. And 20 seconds later, your heart rate comes down. This is involuntary. This is called the dive reflex. That's the parasympathetic division. That's rest and digest. And then for me, I'm kind of looking around and it's usually a beautiful morning in Phoenix and there's a little sunshine. I have a view on my balcony and I'm like, everything is right with the world. What was I even worried about? By the time I get out, and I only do like 2-3 minutes, unless I'm shooting a video, I will only do 2 or 3 minutes. If I'm shooting a video, I might be in there for 8, doing like 6 takes on erectile dysfunction or something. But for the
Hopefully
most
you're
part,
dressed.
it's 2 or 3 minutes. I got to frame those carefully.
Yeah,
I live by
please,
myself.
please.
Lots of ice. But the point is, I get out. I've given my nervous system a workout. I'm not really plunging for the brown fat at this point. Oh, that's good. That's there. I'm not going to lose all my brown fat in one day. I'm plunging to give my nervous system the workout. And there is good science on this. One of the best physiological measures of psychological resilience is heart rate variability.
HRV.
And heart rate variability, yep, there you go. Heart rate variability is how athletes recover from a difficult workout. It's how people recover from a stressful experience. Heart rate variability is the best measure of our capacity to adapt and recover from stress. The ice bath is wonderful for heart rate variability because it's like a workout for your parasympathetic division. And we live in a constant state of sympathetic overload. You might think that you're driving a car, eating your croissant, shifting your gears and drinking your coffee all at once, and you can still change the channel on your radio and it's no big deal. But it is a big deal. You have to be in a constant vigilant state just to get through like a regular day. By the end of it, your parasympathetic hasn't gotten any exercise, metaphorically speaking. And this is where the ice bath is so good. You come out of that and you feel like nothing can even touch you. You've already been through the worst thing that's going to happen in your day, and you're going to stay calm and cool for the whole rest of it.
For sure, absolutely, 100%. It's that first step into the bath that I can't. And I just got to tame my inner bitch, get in, and I love it because I get that shock, and every time I jump in, I step in and then I just plop down quickly. And it's like, oh shit. And then what I really love about it is I then do breath work for 3 minutes.
Absolutely.
I'm combining the cold plus breath work. And it's really funny.
But you're not hyperventilating, I would hope.
Oh God, no. I'm doing a nice slow, it's funny. I can tell how is my nervous system today. 3 minutes, a really good day for my nervous system is like 21 or 22 breaths. On average, it's about 27 breaths. And when I'm not in a good nervous system state, sometimes 32, 33, 35 breaths. And I'm like, wow, there's a big difference going on today. Something's weird. So, but that I love the breath work while I'm doing it. So,
A quick measure of your parasympathetic, I'm going to call it tone. That's not really a clinical word, but your parasympathetic readiness for stress is a breath hold. And I don't mean a breath hold after you've done some Wim Hof breathing. I mean, you're just sort of like in a conversation, you say, you know what? I'm going to time a breath hold. The longer you can go, the more you can handle. The shorter you are before you feel that urge where you're like, I really got to breathe. The less you have, the less stress you can put on top of your body. And so this is a fascinating little, you don't need a Whoop or an Aura ring or something like that, but a fascinating little check that you can do on yourself to say, am I ready for that speech? Am I ready for that exam? Am I ready for that, whatever that stressful, that meeting with my attorney? I don't know what it's going to be. And if you're not, you can use the ice bath to improve it, or you can do some breath work to get yourself focused, get some of that parasympathetic tone, and then get ready for the stress.
yeah, for sure. Um, well, cool.
We got one loose. Before I let you go, we got to talk about mitochondria, and we got to circle back to testosterone again. And this is important because some women might get confused that, well, testosterone is a male hormone and I don't need that. No, no, no. Testosterone is the dominant sex hormone in women, just like it is in men. Every single sex hormone originates in the mitochondria. And so mitochondria are essential for both male and female sex hormones, all of them, and cortisol for that matter. Now, it might be different organs, but it is the mitochondria that will take cholesterol and convert it into a sex steroid called pregnenolone. You can actually take pregnenolone. You can get exogenous pregnenolone because that's upstream of DEHA or DHEA or testosterone. The pregnenolone will boost your levels. But downstream of pregnenolone, there's a lot of different metabolic pathways that the pregnenolone can be converted into. And to some extent, they compete with one another. The reason that young men are suffering from low testosterone, it's got nothing to do with video games. It's got nothing to do with porn. It has nothing to do with the elementary school teachers are all women or something like this. It has everything to do with mitochondria. Our mitochondria are under assault like you wouldn't believe. There are more seed oils in the diet. There's more non-native EMF in our environment. And there's more advice to just keep snacking, whether that's marketing advice or dietitian advice. Our mitochondria as a population are in the worst shape ever. That's why male testosterone levels are so low. And when you fix the mitochondria, you fix the testosterone, but you also fix the estradiol. And the women who have measured these after starting an ice bath program have seen boosts there too, which makes total sense. You also fix the cortisol system. The mythology is that if you do an ice bath, you're going to spike your cortisol. It's not entirely false because if you have no cold training, you will get a cortisol spike unless you're already so high. If you're already so high, all the data I've seen is your body doesn't layer more cortisol onto a high cortisol state. It kind of knows. But after 2 weeks, these longer studies where the people do the cold training, they don't get the same cortisol spike they used to. Guess what? They get acclimated to the cold. So everything that you're doing with your mitochondria is correcting the steroid system on which your body relies, both for sex steroids and for the stress steroids. I can't emphasize enough the value of the mitobiogenesis that comes with a regular cold practice because the hormones are where all the leverage is in your body. It's the hormones that tell your body what to do. It's not the DNA. The DNA is a library sort of full of protein recipes. If your body says, oh, I need this protein, they go to the DNA library and they, make some RNA and they synthesize the protein that they need. Who do you think is asking for those recipes? It's the mitochondria.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And and that's another thing. Like we live in a constant state of fight or flight, and so when you can manage and control your cortisol levels, you know, and change how well your adrenals adapt. It's almost like an adaptogenic. You know, rhodiola, other things are adaptogenics, which lower your cortisol. So cold plunging is almost like an adaptogenic. It's going to balance out your hormone levels way, way better.
I
So,
agree.
one last question, and then you know, there's some concern about like cold plunging before workout or cold plunging after workout. Personally, I cold plunge and then I get out and I work out right then and there, and it's awesome because I'm warming myself up. But I have found that I get really good gains from doing that, and you're gonna tell me,
Because you're human.
yeah,
Everybody feels like they get really good gains. Craig Heller's work at Stanford, he was also on Huberman's podcast. And he was talking about what he was doing with what's called percooling. So this is heat extraction between sets of a workout. It's wonderful. One of your body's defense mechanisms, and by defense, I mean to defend the mitochondria, is fatigue. Mitochondria are life. The mitochondrial activity is what makes life happen. If you don't have any mitochondria, then there's no energy flow through your body, and we call that death. So the body must protect these organelles inside the cells. The way they do their job is they will take fats or glucose and they will respire. They will add oxygen to break these hydrocarbons down into carbon dioxide and water. That releases a lot of chemical energy. And for the most part, the mitochondria are going to make ATP out of that chemical energy. And then the ATP becomes the energy source for everything else: wound repair, exercise, thinking, everything that our body does. The secondary role is thermogenesis, making heat. The problem is that the mitochondria aren't perfect. Every time they have to move electrons from carbon and hydrogen into oxygen, these electrons are going back and forth. Some of them leak out. Some of them don't go where they're supposed to go. And they produce something called reactive oxygen species. These reactive oxygen species in small quantities will stimulate more mitobiogenesis. They're like a hormetic stressor, a little ROS, and your mitochondria are like, oh, well, we better get our act together here, and they'll come back stronger. The melatonin that mitochondria produce, which I didn't know until Joe Mercola and I were on the phone, and he's like, no, I don't want to talk about cold plunging. Did you know mitochondria make their own melatonin? I had no idea. The melatonin is the antioxidant. It's the thing that will sacrifice its electrons to these reactive oxygen species before the ROS can find mitochondrial DNA, because mitochondria have their own DNA. And if the ROS get at that mitochondrial DNA because your melatonin is messed up or depleted, then your mitochondria are going to suffer injury. They're going to need more recovery. Okay, so I was saying the body has to protect the mitochondria because the mitochondria have a job to do. But if they are overtaxed, this could be fatal. Fatigue is one of those bodily responses to protect the mitochondria. They say, you know what? No more exercise right now. The mitochondria are spent. There's reactive oxygen species running around all over. We're running out of melatonin. If you keep exercising, you're going to do irrevocable damage to these organelles. Well, heat is an essential part of that damaging equation. When the mitochondria get too hot, the electrons get more excited, more reactive oxygen species, more damage, more fatigue. When you're extracting that excess heat from the body while it's exercising or right before it exercises, you postpone fatigue. You get I'm going to speak in general terms, but about a 25% improvement in peak muscle power output. So you'll be able to lift more or jump farther. But you also get an extension of the number of reps that you can do before you're exhausted. This is a thermophysical phenomenon. Now, I know that your mindset is important. I've seen the guys in the gym who are like, one more. I've watched the videos of David Goggins who can do like 120 push-ups just through the sheer willpower that he can exude to his brain. That's not me. I don't know how much of that mentality boost is going to get that extra rep. What I know is that the readers report to me they tried the pre-cooling for the first time and they just knocked out a personal best. They weren't even straining.
That's cool. That's really neat, actually. The pre-cooling definitely. I can bang out a session after cold plunge lifting, and it's just like no problem. Like, yeah, it makes sense now.
Yep.
Actually, the way we think about it. And so, Michael, you have any other questions?
Actually, I do, going back to the brown fat, because I'm thinking about brown now. Because I'm brown, so. And I'm thinking, like, I came from the Philippines. I got here in the United States when I was 16. So, and they don't have any cold plunge. And so I'm thinking, like, is that a difference between health and just a thought?
It's modest. There are differences, and the differences are smaller than people make them out to be. And I'm going to try and explain why. The oldest human fossils are in East Africa. If there's a Garden of Eden, it was in East Africa. And that's you, Michael, that's me, that's Robert, I don't care. Humans haven't been around all that long, okay? And they originated in East Africa. And so you say, well, East Africa, that's right on the equator. That must be hot. So what are you talking about all this cold stuff for? No, there are 4 glaciers in East Africa right now in the modern age. Where does Wim Hof take his trainees? And, with their T-shirts and their shirtless, they run up Mount Kilimanjaro, which is in East Africa on the equator. But if you go back about 70,000 years, there was a massive volcano, blocked out the atmosphere with ash. Permanent, I shouldn't say permanent, winter for like 3 years. There's just no summer. This launches an ice age. Those 4 glaciers were much more massive. Now, how did our ancestors survive? They're at the water's edge. They foraged in the water. There's no crops to speak of. The grazing animals are making do with whatever they can, and our ancestors are in the water foraging for seaweed and shellfish and whatever else that they can eat. That water was coming down off the mountain. It was melting off those glaciers, and it was cold. You have cold in your lineage, and I have it in mine. Now, more recently than 70 years, people, they spread all over the planet. My ancestors, they carry a mutation just like I do that allows them to digest lactose in adulthood. Well, thank goodness, because we can milk a cow all winter, feed it hay, and we're going to survive strong into the spring. My people come from the North Sea, and we need to make vitamin D out of the cold exposure and not because there's no frickin' sun. Your people found their way all the way over to East Asia. And now I'm kind of speculating, Michael. I haven't really met your ancestors, but then they get in a dugout canoe and they, paddle halfway across the Pacific. They carry the same mitochondria as my people. There are some subtle differences. Mitochondria can be divided into haplotypes, but mitochondria are inherited exclusively through the maternal line. It's not sexual reproduction. It's what's it called? Mitosis. They reproduce by splitting, and both mitochondria are identical twin sisters. So mitochondria are subject to a higher rate of mutation and damage than the DNA in the nucleus. They just don't have as much protection, but they are not subject to the sexual rearrangements that would cause variation. And so these haplotypes can be identified, but I suspect that the differences have been exaggerated in the literature. I'm speculating. I know a lot of Black people in the United States who aren't getting enough sunshine. And they need to get this message that vitamin D is made from UVB radiation. It's just not available in the wintertime. But recently, I've discovered that vitamin D is also made in our brown fat. And this is mind-blowing. The mitochondria, when they're moving these electrons around and some of them leak out, they cannot help but produce light. You cannot move an electron through from one atom to another without releasing light. Some of that light is in the UVB part of the spectrum. Now, most of it in non-shivering thermogenesis is thousands of nanometers in wavelength. The light is really what we call heat or infrared heat. But some of it goes all the way down to 200 nanometers. And this means you have UVB light in your brown fat cells when your brown fat mitochondria are active. As soon as that 300 nanometer light intersects the right cholesterol molecule, it will convert it into pre-vitamin D. Now, mostly the pre-vitamin D made in your skin, it's got to be carried through your bloodstream. All your cells have vitamin D receptors. Eventually, it has to get stored in a fat cell until it's released because your body needs it. But when you make the vitamin D inside your fat cell, it's right where it needs to be stored. It won't find its way into the bloodstream until your body needs it. So I thought that I was so clever, and I put together this article and I said, look, this is physics and this has to happen. And people said, yes, but has it ever been measured in a clinical setting? You don't really know what you're talking about. You're just sort of putting together the pieces like you're Scooby-Doo or something, and you're going to solve the mystery. Then these people in Poland, I don't know who they are, but God bless them, because they took a bunch of Polish women and performed cryotherapy and then measured their vitamin D levels. They went up. And why would they go up? Because the cold is stimulating the brown fat. The mitochondria are making light inside the body. That's producing vitamin D in the brown fat cells. And this is the first clinical verification of what people were saying was a hypothesis, but I was treating like it's inevitable. So here's what I'm saying, Michael. In the absence of a cold season, people's only source of photosynthetic vitamin D will be the sun. You can get a little bit from food, but I think the best is what your body's making. You now live, I don't know where you live, but you don't live in the Philippines anymore. Your environment is cold, you get less sun, you've got to make up for it. You've got to allow yourself to experience the cold so that your body can adapt to the environment that you live in. I suspect that if you do this, you're going to feel good.
Well, like I said, when I was talking to you earlier, Michael is a brand ambassador for Degree Wellness, and he will be cold plunging and cryotherapying
Yes.
a couple times a week now.
That's
So Tom, where can people find you?
On Instagram, I'm Seager TP. On Twitter, I'm Seager TP. You can read all of the crazy ideas on metabolism and cold that I publish for free at moroscoforge.com. You go to the science tab, all my articles are there. But if you're like me, my mother taught me to write in all the books that I read. So I need the hard copies. You can get Uncommon Testosterone on Amazon. You can get Uncommon Cold at moroscoforge.com. And of course, if you're the type of person that has $20,000 burning a hole in his pocket, you can get your Amex Platinum, whatever the heck it is, out, and you can buy an ice bath off of moroscoforge.com. We make the best ice baths in the world. We have the best warranty in the world. And we are not the cheapest. You cannot get a Morosco off of Alibaba, but you can't get grounding off of Alibaba in your cold plunge either. You can't get one that's warranted for Epsom salt. You can't get one that is warranted for outdoor use. There's a certain type of customer who is very quality sensitive more than they are price sensitive. And those are mostly Morosco people. And there are other good brands. Desert Plunge is a good brand if it's not in your budget to go all the way to Morosco. There's other American manufacturers you can get good value from.
Cold Tub. That's one of the good ones too. So also just let people know sometimes Morosco has refurbished units for like $5,000. That's where I got mine. I saw that. I was like, bam, buying it.
Yep. Oh, no kidding. good move, Robert. They go fast. We sold the last one we had in stock last night. And I went into our website and I'm like going to take the inventory down. And I was like, what am I doing? I should also put the price up because the refurbs don't last long at all. And this tells me, because what we do is we take all the refrigeration out, we take all the plumbing out, we sand the whole thing down, we put in brand new mechanical equipment, and there's a brand new finish, and we warranty it as if it were new. I think you got a hell of a deal.
I got a smoking deal.
Thank you,
So,
Tom.
well, thank you so much, Tom. Really great chatting with you. You are a wealth of knowledge.
Yes.
Love to have you back another time. And
Yeah, maybe more brown
discuss
stuff.
some other fun stuff.
When I'm in Reno, stop by Degrees of
Yes,
Health, get my
yes.
sauna on.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we'll video that.
There you go.
That sounds great.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
It's been a pleasure.